You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
Terminou naquele Schwarzenegger.
Ya lo hace, pierna derecha, directo al arco, golazo, golazo, golazo.
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
I've always found, Kevin, that if you have to wait for something, it always is just a little bit sweeter. You know, dessert after dinner, MLS Cup playoff success after 10 years of walking in the wilderness.
If you had Christmas every year, every month of every year, we do have Christmas every year. If you have it every month of every year, it wouldn't be something special. It would be just another Sunday out of 4.
It'd be Sunday, yeah.
Exactly. Now that we had to wait, 14 days for the first game and another 10 for the second game that's going to happen Wednesday at your Toronto FC Stadium, BMO Fields. Not to be confused with where the Grey Cup was. Oh, wait, it's the same stadium.
Yes, it would exactly be the same stadium. The other thing you have to wait for, of course, today was Soccer Today, a little bit later than normal, but we're here now. Kevin, you're on the way down for that second leg on Toronto.
Yes.
We're going to talk about this a lot tomorrow. It's going to be the entire focus of our extended Tuesday show, which will serve as our preview for Soccer Today. Traveling on Wednesday is Kevin, so we'll unfortunately not be able to get the show out that day, but
But you'll get some bonus content on social media, Duane, at Kev Laramee, at Off the Woodworks, at SportsPodNet, during the game, before the game, after the game. You'll have live video on Facebook as well. So go right now, while you are listening to the show, you can open on your phone your Facebook app, because you do have the Facebook app. Who doesn't? It's 2016. Go to go to facebook.com, Sports Podcasting Network, like that page, and make sure you catch all the live feed, not just for that, but for the MLS Cup, because, Duane, if all goes according to plan, we're actually been approved today, but not just that, travel is in the works, either Seattle or Toronto, but Soccer Today will be at the MLS Cup.
For sure. Yeah, Kevin will travel to Seattle if it is the Impact to be Seattle. I am not going to go to Seattle because, well, you know, there's only so many days and so much money in the world. But I will, of course, be in Toronto if it is in Toronto. That would be awful funny if I went to Seattle if the game was in Toronto. That would make no sense.
Duane, what are you doing? Well, why Seattle? Why would you go there when you don't have to? Like, bring your umbrella. But, yeah, you know what I was thinking? Seattle's far away.
It is a long ways away. I know people that have been to games at Seattle, and the different experience because they went and watched the game as with Seattle fans. Like they were neutrals, but they went in with the Seattle fans who weren't with away support. So I can't imagine what it would be like there with the away support. But they should get a big crowd if it is there and allow the Impact to travel in big numbers. If it's in Toronto and it's Toronto v Seattle, I'm sure that Seattle will try and travel in big numbers here as well. They'll get the 500-600 as many as they can. It'll be a good time. It should be a good time no matter what. But we both know who both of us are cheering for on Wednesday. So we'll move on from that. Kevin, look, some stuff today, a few minutes left in this segment that I wanted to talk about. It's on my Twitter all over. And I feel like in many ways that when I'm talking about the Canadian Premier League, that I've already talked it to death, right? That I put all my takes are out there, all my excitement, all the worries about it. They've been stated. But there was some news that came out today. Most specifically, it was I have received confirmation from a very, very well placed source, a source that is very conservative too, that wouldn't give me this information if it wasn't ready to go public. So you can trust me on this one when I've been avoided dates on the announcement. But what I've been told is that the vote at the next the next CSA Board of Directors meeting, it is on the agenda to be voted, the ratification vote to approve the Canadian Premier League project. Now that doesn't mean, folks, it doesn't mean that the league will be announced on the 4th of December. But what it does mean is that the Canadian Soccer Association Board of Directors will vote on whether they're going to approve it right now. If they were to say no, they could defer it. They could say we're not ready yet, and that would also be possible. They could say yes, we're good to go, but they won't necessarily have an announcement immediately. But that is what is happening, likely December 4th, Kevin.
So following the hire of Paul Byrne 2 weeks ago as an first employee of the Canadian Premier League, quote unquote, because it's the working title for now, on December 4th, you will have written on a piece of paper those 3 words in the column vote and order of the day.
Exactly. Couple minutes. We'll go to 10 to the hour, and then we have Dave Clark on at the top of this hour, 7 o'clock if you're listening live. Kevin, the other thing that I heard, and this is some things that I've learned the other day. Now, people ask all kinds of questions about this. It does look like they're going to go with that soft launch that Paul Byrne talked about, meaning there will probably only be 6 clubs to start with. Unfortunately for our Quebec listeners, that still remains an area of difficulty for them to find an investor in that part of the world. And I think we all hope that there will be a French team, a team from French Canada beyond Ottawa. Ottawa is, of course, part of French Canada. It is a bilingual city in the truest sense. But nonetheless, you know what we mean when we say that. We hope there is a team in the heart of Quebec, and I think Kevin agrees with me that Quebec City is the right place for that. But in this point right now, they're still searching. They're still looking to find that, and that is why they're likely going to go ahead with this soft launch to allow the league to establish itself, so that you can attract those investors during those years, rather than rushing someone that's not really fully invested, not really fully understanding the project. You kind of started and work to find those additional investors for the second season and even third season going forward, Kevin.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. You had some other news on the Premier League, Duane. The talk of a women's division, a women league, and it reminds me a lot of what League One Ontario did when they started a few years ago. Yeah,
look, and let's be careful with this. This isn't for sure. But I have received information that it is something that has been on their agenda. Now, think about the owners that are involved in this league, in the Canadian Premier League for men, is that they look at the amount of big numbers, the amount of numbers of people that come out in this country to support women's soccer, and they naturally think, well, we should look at this as well. And, you know, that's going there. I'm talking from a business perspective, right? Like, they look at that and think this is another opportunity to increase the amount of dates we have in our building. This is another opportunity to increase the amount of money that are coming into this product. It's a pretty crass way to look at it, but it's how they look at it, right?
Exposure, the same brand that's duplicated, more reach because of that brand in 2 different communities, in the soccer community and what has been known as the women's soccer community, the women's soccer fan as well. So in those communities that are intertwining, yes, but you do reach them all if you have a team in each.
Yeah, precisely. And look, they have been convinced, I think correctly, that the way to do this is to launch on the men's side first. And look, and I understand if there's women listeners out there that this is frustrating, and it's not necessarily fair. In fact, I'll say it outright. It's not fair that this is the way the world works right now, but it is the way the world works right now. So they're going to launch on the men's side to establish themselves, to get their footing, and then there are plans, from what I've been told, to continue this project on to its natural conclusion, so that there are teams on both sides of this. And this is, I think, one of these areas, when I look at the launching of this league and why it's so unique and so interesting and so exciting in so many ways, is that it's so rare in 2016 that you would have a chance to create a national professional structure from scratch. And if you were creating a national professional structure from scratch anywhere in the world right now, you would naturally try to create it in a gender equal way. That didn't exist. That impulse didn't exist even as recently as 1996 when MLS was being launched. And I think, as I'm saying, what I'm getting to is, if you were launching MLS today, you would absolutely have plans to extend that, to have an extension of that brand. There was some talk about that around the late 90s to have women's soccer involved, but they turned the MLS down at that point. But at any rate, I think that this is a natural and exciting conclusion, and I personally look forward to it. And it would just, we're about to basically quadruple the amount of job opportunities for both players, administration, coaching, and everything else in this country for professional soccer. Well, they're going to double it again at that point, right? So that's a good thing for everyone involved, and I think it's a great thing if they were able to get that launched for not just Canada, but from all of North America, because it would provide an opportunity for a lot of, mostly Canadian players, but there would, as on the men's side, it will benefit the United States. Because some of those players that can't hook on with the very limited opportunities that exist there right now could find work in Canada. It will help the Caribbean. It will help Central America. It's not necessarily the goal of the league, but it will indirectly. And I think that's an important thing and should excite our non-Canadian listeners out there, Kevin.
So are you saying that the world did evolve in the last 20 years?
Well, I see. Yeah, it's probably, yeah. I'm rambling because it's a difficult time in the world, as we all know, but we're not going to go down that road.
No, but I have faith. Exactly. The last 20 years showed that if you look at a soccer perspective, women's game has made strive. Will it ever be equal? It's not a question. Will it at least have opportunities? Hopefully it will.
Yeah, look, I mean, I was at the Get Your Bingo Card, the League One Ontario banquet on Sunday. Beautiful 4-course meal that they fed me, which I know no one cares about my meal, but I'll say one thing. It was in Vaughan, in the heart of the Italian part of the city. And say what you want about my friends, the Italians, and I love them dearly. They can cook. The stereotypes are correct on that front, and I think that's a stereotype that they will embrace, Kevin. And it was a very good meal, and I enjoyed it immensely. The dessert was spectacular. Anyway,
well, just so you know, I owe a lot of my cooking skills to some Italian nanas that I met when I was growing up.
Exactly. So it was a good time was had by all. The point I was making as the final point of this segment is exactly you led off with it when you started this topic of conversation, is that League One Ontario launched in the men's side. It was only a single season. They played men only. And a lot of people criticized them at the time for not having a women's program. And they insisted that they were working on it, and they were. And by the time the women's program launched, it has been very successful, and it has expanded, and it will probably expand again. In fact, there will be a League One Ontario expansion announcement in the days ahead and in December. I mean, we're still in November. I was about to say this month, but we're almost at Christmas time now, so before Christmas. And I think you'll see that the women's side of that league will probably expand a bit more than the men's side this time. And that's just reflective of the fact that they're still, the men's side needs to solidify that. They've got, I think, to a critical point on the men's side of League One Ontario where they're okay, and they need to make things more solid. And I think the women's side still needs to add a few more teams, and I think that they will this year. And in fact, I've heard a very exciting team that may come in, and we'll talk about that when it happens, though, Kevin. All right, let's take a quick break now. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk a little bit about some unfortunate news in the NASL.
You are listening to SPN Radio, powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
I feel like sometimes, Kevin, that we all we do is talk about what's wrong with the NASL, and because
it's true, but because it's what it's there to talk about.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because there's an article today in Empire of Soccer, and it's by Dave Martinez, who's been on this show before and is right now booked for 11 a.m. tomorrow on our live show. So we'll talk about this a little bit further with him at the time. He was unfortunately unable to make it tonight. He had to pick his kids up, and we understand that. It's a weird time of day for a lot of people. But nonetheless, what Dave reported was that the Cosmos, the New York Cosmos, are in a lot of trouble. And this article is troubling in the sense that a lot of the things that we were hearing in Fort Lauderdale appear to have been happening in New York. The only real difference being that the Cosmos, because of their administration, their technical staff insisted that they make sure that the players be taken care of. So there wasn't necessarily the same kind of not paying the players stuff that was going on. But that's not much better, because what that meant is they were cutting corners administratively. They were not paying staff for that. They were cutting people back. There wasn't paychecks going out. And then allegedly, just before the championship took place, there was about a 2-week period where the players themselves also did not receive their money. And this is the flagship of the NASL. I have been talking to some people off the record today, and I can verify that the stories that are being put out there are true. I have been given some timelines that I'm not going to share right now because I've been asked not to, but certainly we will continue to follow this very closely. It is a very difficult kind of piece of news because it could potentially mean not just the death of a team and a brand that has resonance in this country. It will mean that in these countries, it might also mean the end of the NASL, Kevin. We've talked about this 1,000 times already, but let's talk about it 1,001 times.
Well,
what thoughts?
One thing too, there's a lot of press conferences scheduled for one date coming early December. Carolina, Tampa Bay, MLS. Everybody has a timeline coming actually now in the next few weeks. So stay tuned until December 6th. And that's not considered regarding what you just mentioned. It's other as well. So it's a very troubling time as now if you are an NASL fan.
Precisely. And look, some specific details from the story. 60 to 80% of the staff are no longer employed, or at least have been laid off temporarily until the start of the season. The Cosmos are the only team in the NASL to not currently be selling tickets for next year. They don't know where they're going to play, and they haven't announced anything, and they're not, that's their line, is they're not going to sell tickets until they know where they're going to play. But there's right now, no one knows. And that's like I said, there was the issue with some of the players not getting paid as well. And like I said, also, I have confirmed that this information that is out there is accurate. So we'll leave it at that. But look, if the Cosmos go down, I think that what you will see very rapidly are the teams like the Indy 11, teams like Carolina, which already Carolina has that announcement coming forward. They're going to bail. They're going to jump ship before they drown. And that's something that's just natural. And that means that this league is probably no more. And, you look at, I think of Mark DeSantos at this point, and I think I mentioned this before. I don't know what that means for him, what it means for that team in San Francisco. Thankfully, they don't have players right now, but he'll be a free agent, is what it will mean.
A few weeks ago, the owner of the Brian Elmas Homick from San Francisco, the owner of the Deltas, he's the CEO of the consortium that is the owner of the San Francisco Deltas, which will start next year. He mentioned that we're going to stand by NSL and help work, and he's probably going to have some equity in the future league as well, if it makes sense, if it's in like a Tom Fass position like in Edmonton. But you mentioned, what does it mean for the Deltas? What does it mean for Edmonton if the NSL is no more? They've been openly mentioned that USL is not a destination for them and stuff like that. So it leaves a lot up in the air that in the next 2 weeks we'll know a lot more about.
Yeah, I think with Edmonton, at least they do have a natural, with our news in the first block, they do have a natural landing spot. The Deltas, I guess, the USL, it is a good market. If they do have a professional organization there, that might be an option for them as well. But you have to start asking your question of how quickly can the USL continue to expand? Like, can they just add teams, carte blanche at this point? And I'm not sure, maybe they might not. There might be a point where they look at their existing teams and say that we have to protect certain markets. We have to protect certain areas that already have existing teams. I think San Francisco might be an area that they'd be happy to have.
Yes.
But nonetheless,
look at it now. Duane, how many teams would it be now? Okay, so we're talking about, we already had Ottawa and Tampa Bay for next year, confirming USL.
Probably Carolina too.
Indy 11, that's 2.
Indy 11's a no-brainer. I think that they could make their own bed. In fact, if they could get a stadium built there, it wouldn't shock me if they could get it in conversation for Major League Soccer. But
yes, but let's just focus here. So Carolina, Indy 11. Who else?
You're looking at San Francisco if they have a good ownership there.
You're looking at the Strikers,
every team
maybe,
but Edmonton and Puerto Rico, basically, that existed, and the Cosmos, because the Cosmos would go away. The Tampa Bay is already gone.
What about Fort Lauderdale? Exactly. Fort Lauderdale was in the same position the Cosmos are. They're probably still close to it with trying to find a new owner for the team, having had trouble with payments throughout the season. You do have that situation in Fort Lauderdale.
And, of course, you have Miami and, their owner, who obviously has ambition because of, releasing that that report last week that we didn't really get back to very much, but the ProRail report. Obviously, he has some ambition, but he obviously, by releasing that report, is not really positioning himself to get involved with anything that has MLS attached to it, and USL does. So you would have to think Miami would be in the outs too, that they wouldn't be much interested in bringing them in. So what does that leave at?
Well, wait, on Miami's situation, Ricardo Silva, owner of the Miami and CEO of the company, if he already is, quote unquote, an opponent of MLS, have been spoken against the business model, against MLS and the way they are managed over the years since the creation and the beginning of Miami FC, saying that, look, we can pull a team together faster than they can even decide what to do with MLS Miami with Beckham. That was the whole idea behind it. And the fact that he has become an opponent, quote unquote, of MLS, the only way he is going to get to MLS if his idea of the promotion relegation, like the report, gets implemented and he promotes himself in, because MLS is not going to give him a team.
Yeah, look, it's a sucker's game. I said this to tie this into our initial topic, the Canadian Premier League topic in the last block, and I had this conversation on Twitter this afternoon, is that I think it's a sucker's bet to try and position yourself as anti-MLS. You're going to bang into a ceiling awfully quick. And I think that that's what's happening with some of these NASL voices that have been so loudly against MLS. Well, if this league goes out from under them, that leaves them high and dry. MLS is going to take them. Would you, if you were MLS, would you take Miami on after they release that report, after they cause these waves, after they release like a one-sided report, basically calling for MLS to change its entire business structure, its entire way it's been managed for years, something that, basically the investors of MLS are looking at this guy going, okay, you're going to pay for my, loss of revenue, right? I mean, this is all
exactly.
Yeah, it's all silly. So I think that, well, and to tie it how I said, as I said that when the Canadian Premier League launches, I think it would be dumb of the teams in Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, if there are teams in those markets, to position themselves that way, because you're just setting yourself up for failure at that point. And this is ultimately what likely is going to happen with this. It's unfortunate, and I want to end it with this, Kevin, is that, look, I do enjoy the NASL, having it around. I think that the best solution, and I increasingly believe this, is to create a two-tiered USL so that you do have teams that can spend a little bit more money, that can kind of operate at that same level that NASL was operating under, but still in a more structured, in a more sane, in a less confrontational
more
manner
sustainable
than the NASL did over the years. Sustainable, exactly.
Yeah, so that's how I say it. It's sustainable is the way that needs to be. Like MLS was built at the beginning. Now it's different, but maybe that thought and that idea is not necessarily a bad one.
Exactly. All right. We're going to take a bit of a break here. Might be 90 seconds or so. We get Dave Clark from Sounder at Heart on the line. We'll be back to talk about Seattle making the MLS Cup final.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
And joining us from Seattle, Dave Clark, the original Sounder at Heart. Dave, how you doing today?
It's a good day. It's a great day.
Dave, how you doing? Dave and I go quite a ways back. I think Dave was the first blogger I ever linked on the old 24th Minute site, Sounder at Heart. So Sounder at Heart and 24th Minute have been tied in for a long time. So with apologies to Kevin, it would be kind of fitting for us to end with an MLS Cup, or not end, but you know what I mean.
Well, we used to play Seattle before you guys. So
yeah, there you go.
I prefer it to be Montreal personally.
Well, yeah, no, you would, because then you don't have to travel. But, exactly. I'll tell you what, we were gathered in a pub, Bo Radley's, thank them for their hospitality, on the west end of the city in Toronto last week, a bunch of Toronto FC supporters watching that. And we were wearing our green that day. I'll say that. We're pretending that we're all Steph Fry fans, and it was nice to cheer for Steph again for a day. But certainly congratulations to you, Dave, for seeing it through. Dave was there before Seattle was in Major League Soccer, and it must have been a pretty special day. To talk about that on a personal level, what was it like to see the club finally break through and make an MLS Cup final?
I mean, it's been so long. It's kind of hard to understand for a lot of MLS fans, because Seattle has been so good. The expectations after 2009 were so high that any year that wasn't an MLS Cup was a failure. And so outsiders were constantly wondering, well, why don't you fire this person? Why don't you just replace the entire roster? You look at the 2011 and 2014 rosters specifically, those were great teams, and they just couldn't get past LA so often. And again, this year didn't need to get past LA, but that's fine, because we're finally getting that shot, and there's a chance that it's here. And to go and kind of dip back into the well and dip into history, where you've got Brian Schmetzer, who's won some trophies at the lower level, who was a NASL sounder from 1980 when he signed as a 17-year-old, and is now the oldest coach in MLS currently. But it's his first year as an MLS coach too. To dip there, to have so many players return. Hercules Gomez, Eric Freeberg, and Alvaro Fernandez were just used to be Sounders, and then they came back and are now Sounders again, and they've all played significant roles on this roster. It's kind of nifty to embrace history at the same time that they're looking to make some more.
Brian Schmetzer, like you mentioned, now the granted, for real, not interim anymore, head coach of the Seattle Sounders heading into next year. How important was his contribution? We talked about a few weeks ago, Dave, about Nico Lodero and how Schmetzer was beneficial of the way that he brought those players in. But how important was his calming presence as a coach, as a tactician, strategist, more than a rah-rah on the sideline?
I'd actually say most of his contributions are about that belief and that personality and the ownership that the players have of the team, that it's going to be up to them and not up to his tactical acumen. It's whether or not they perform. He's been very consistent about preaching that. He's very consistent about telling the fan base that it is up to them and the players. It's not up to him. He calls himself a steward and a caretaker. Yes, he is adequate tactically, but you wouldn't put him down as an American soccer genius. What he is a local historian and legend who has placed a belief into the team and a responsibility into the team that they're embracing. And oftentimes when you fire a coach, you get that bounce. In this case, he's maintained the bounce because he's shown them that everything that they do as players is a reflection on themselves and the organization. They can't hide from it, and they can take credit for it. So getting that belief from the players was extraordinarily important. In MLS, the talent discrepancies just aren't huge. And if motivation and personality can get you a 1% boost, that can go quite a long way in the league.
Speaking of motivation and personality, Jordan Morris with the game-winning goal that didn't clinch the series, but made sure that it was put away. What can you tell us about Jordan Morris and his presence? He had a tough beginning of the season. They were not going in, but then confidence became part of his day-to-day life, and he started to be maybe the rookie of the year. I'm not sure. I think he was. I can't remember.
Yeah, he did win. Yeah,
he did win. So, what made you? What surprised you about Jordan Morris this season?
I'm just going to be forthright. I founded Sounder at Heart and actually knew of Jordan Morris before that. He and his father were customers of mine back when he was like 8 or 9 years old, when I worked in coffee rather than media. So I'm very biased for Jordan Morris, and I'm extraordinarily excited that he's doing it for the local team that I support. What has impressed me the most this year are not his goal-scoring abilities, but the way that he's adapted other parts of the game. There was an interview he had with Taylor Twellman probably about 6 weeks ago, where Taylor asked him, "Are you a goal scorer or a forward?" And talking to Taylor later, Taylor's like, "I was a goal scorer." Jordan Morris is a forward. He looks to try to have a more complete game. He's a really good goal scorer too, but some of the passing that he's developed, you saw in his foregoing his own shot and passing it to Nico Lodero against Dallas in the playoffs. You look at his hold-up play. You look at his ability to provide pressure up the field, because that's one of the things that Seattle decided to do under Schmetzer was apply pressure a little bit higher on the pitch. And Morris has been part of that. He runs tirelessly. His stamina didn't give out, which is, one of the things that plagues so many college players. But it's that more than the goal scoring. It's the other things to his game that make him a special American soccer player. I mean, Rookie of the Year. He is a U.S. national team member. He's not amongst the best forwards, but he's somebody that you should expect to see if the United States qualifies. He should be at Russia. He will be on Gold Cup rosters for years to come. So it's been a heck of a revelation, because there was one point where he was going to be the fourth forward on a three-forward line, and instead he became, for most of the season, the only forward in a single forward set.
Dave, we'll get back to the current year in a minute, but I did want to, whenever a team makes the final for the first time, whenever there's been success, and obviously the Sounders, as you said in your first answer, have been so successful in Major League Soccer for so long that it's hard to remember that this was a minor soccer market, a minor league soccer market for years, as was Toronto, as was Montreal. In fact, a little bit of trivia for you people that are North American soccer geeks out there, this will represent the first time that an A-League market, if you remember the A-League, back in the 90s into the early 2000s, the first time that an A-League market will win the MLS Cup. And I think that is a significant thing, because those A-League markets, the people that supported those back then, they were the hardcore that believed in local soccer and fought to get these markets into Major League Soccer, into the top level. How much of your crowd right now have been around since those days, Dave? How many people, in your estimation, in Seattle have been supporting the game for years and years and years? And just how special would it be for them to see Seattle at the pinnacle of the game?
Okay, I'm going to take a little shot at Portland right now, because some of your listeners might say, well, Portland was around back then. And to clarify, no, they weren't. They didn't exist in the 90s. There were no Portland Timbers. There was no professional soccer there. So though they did win MLS Cup, they were not an A-League market. So Duane is right on, because Portland doesn't have that level of soccer history. Just an opportunity to take a shot at that market in that city.
They are a USL market, but yeah.
But not until 2002.
Yeah.
So, they did not enjoy the A-League. They had a dark decade, as I like to call it, where there was no professional soccer. When you talk about, the support here, obviously the A-League support was really good for the A-League out here in Seattle, kind of like it was for the NASL and the USL era. It was strong, but it was also only a couple of thousand. But what you see from those couple thousand is there were players. Marcus Hanneman came through the A-League, was the backup keeper here when he retired, and now pops into broadcasting practices once in a while. Brian Schmetzer was an assistant coach at times and a player. I think he was a player on that 94-95 team, kind of wrapping up his playing career. Pete Fewing was with those teams, and he's now a local coach and broadcaster. A lot of that laid the foundation for the success that you see now. We talk about that history quite a bit, and we try to recognize it as often as we can. You look at Jordan Morris, and his father was the doctor for the USL era Sounders. And while the number of fans that stretches from that historical period to the present is small, the potency of the history and the legacy is there, because without it, the Sounders are not what they are now, because so many people do know, maybe they caught only one game, or now they're season ticket holders is kind of a lot of it. And those of us that were fond of that era, we tell those stories. We talk about Memorial Stadium, which was a horrible place to watch the game. And we talk about Starfire. I talked to Hercules Gomez last night after the celebration. He talked about 2003 when he played for the Sounders the first time. It was at the time it was called Quest Field, and there would only be about 3,500 people in the stands. And you guys have seen the size of that stadium. With 3,500, that's a horrible experience. It's kind of like early MLS with Arrowhead, when it was 100,000 people and they'd have 10 show up. It was very similar to that. But that foundation got laid, and without that foundation, Sounders soccer and Seattle soccer is not what it is right now.
Fair enough. And of course, the Toronto Lynx and the Montreal Impact were both part of the A-League. We'll put it this way to make sure that we don't ruffle any feathers. The first team to have ever played a competitive game against the Lehigh Valley Steam I don't know if you remember that club or not, but they were in the League A for a single season in 1999. The first team to ever play them will have won the MLS Cup at the end of this. Also the that's Hershey Wildcats, the Milwaukee Rampage. Lots of fun history there if you like your North American soccer, Dave. But let's turn back to the future, or back to the now. Going into that second leg, we all knew how strong Colorado's defensive record was, how strong they were at home. How confident were you headed into that game, and how close to a perfect game plan do you think the Sounders played in that second leg?
I don't think they were close to a perfect game plan because, frankly, the first half scared me. The defense was very poor. The ability to maintain possession was bad. And that's not a good way to deal with the altitude, to be chasing the game, because that first half is when you will have your lunch. So I'm glad it worked out, but I would hope that if they have that opportunity again, that they maybe do something a little bit different. But at the same point, yes, Colorado had an extraordinary defense, but they only scored 2 goals in their 4 playoff games. They were the lowest scoring team to make the playoffs and the second lowest scoring team in the league. So with the Sounders having that edge, I was confident that they would advance, but I felt going into it was going to be something like a 1-1. And the reason behind that is because the Sounders have figured out this on offense, despite having no Clint Dempsey, having, basically Nelson Valdez, Nico Ladero, and Jordan Morris as their goal scorers. They figured out a way to score almost 2 goals a game in the playoffs. And that's been against quality defensive teams. Sporting Kansas City is a quality defensive side. Dallas was a quality defensive side, and now they've done it against the Rapids as well. Part of that change in the midseason wasn't, we talked about Nico Ladero, we talked about Brian Schmetzer. In the playoffs, Nelson Hato Valdez has, I think it's 3 goals and 2 assists, or 3 goals and 1 assist after having a season where he was a bit player, and now he's important. I mean, if Joe Roth and Adrian Hanauer's $1 billion plus DP salary that they've handed him means that they've made the MLS Cup, all of a sudden that's probably worth it for them. Getting a Western Conference trophy and having the opportunity to win the title, if that means you have a third DP that is only worth it during the playoffs, it's not the type of thing that you'd like to repeat if you're them, but at this point they have to think that it finally worked.
When you're looking at this one game, the MLS Cup final on December 10th, how different is the approach for the Sounders to trying to get the victory in one? They've been scoring 2 goals a game, like you mentioned, in the playoff, except last game. How different is the approach, if any different?
I think that if you look at their overall season, they had a stout defense except for the final few weeks in July. If you drop July from their defensive record, which was basically the July that got Siggy Schmidt fired, their defense was great. Probably about 3rd best in the league up until that point. And it has done fine with Ramon Torres there as well. They have the opportunity to get Brad Evans back on the field, maybe Eric Freeberg back in the field. So the defense is going to be good. And despite all the goal scoring, Sounders soccer is still built around defense. That's the way it started in 2009, and that's except for the Supporters Shield winning year in 2014, they've always been a great defensive team, or a good defensive team, built from the back, with Alonso and Roldan in the midfield now, and Chad Marshall and Ramon Torres behind them. That's a rather rigid spine, and so I think when you look at MLS Cup, they're going to focus on that first and the goal scoring second, and it's a technique that's been working for them for the past several months, and they can't afford to change it just because MLS Cup has higher pressure. One of the things that Brian Schmetzer is about being proactive and forcing other teams to adjust to him, and it's one of the things that Siggy Schmidt wasn't. He tended to be reactive, particularly in the playoffs, where he would try to tinker so much based on what he thought the other side would do. In this case, Schmetzer's going to go with what he believes is the Sounders' strength and try to force Montreal or Toronto, whoever's there, to make their adjustments.
Speaking of Montreal or Toronto, who do you want in the final? Montreal or Toronto? And not because you can host, but if it was a neutral site, who would you rather play, Montreal or Toronto?
See, what I love is no matter what, there's some good and fun stories that we can tell and explore. I'm going to enjoy. One of the fun things about sports, and Duane and I have talked about this in the past, is the ability to meet people from different areas, and that's going to happen regardless if it's Toronto or Montreal. Seattle, just due to the cross-conference thing, we don't have a lot of interaction with either of those cities. They're places that we need to know. And both teams offer some great talents. Nacho Piatti, I had him in my best 11. Giovinco, Michael Bradley, and Josie Altidore should be well known to anyone. The weird case of Didier Drogba for Montreal was fun. I've enjoyed their defense in Montreal is something to enjoy watching, as long as you don't care who wins. When you just observe from the outside, I think their defense is quality. But for me, on a neutral side, I wouldn't think the Sounders are favored versus either team. So I'm not really going to pick one. I'll be rooting Wednesday night for Montreal just for selfish reasons. I want 69,000 people at Saint-Germain Field for an MLS Cup final. We got 45,000 when it was Real Salt Lake against the LA Galaxy. So we better crush that number if the Sounders are hosting.
Yeah, I assume it would be a sellout. I suspect, Dave. Is there any chance it wouldn't be like I've already seen tickets for available on StubHub for both Toronto and Seattle, the two possible places? That doesn't really necessarily mean anything. But has the reaction been in Seattle following the clinching of the finals berth? It's
funny. There's a little bit of it's pure celebration right now for what is essentially a minor trophy. There's no CCL berth. It might be worth a tiny bit more than something like the Heritage Cup or one of the less historic rivalry cups around the league. But it's not MLS Cup, and due to the dates separating the two conference finals, there's this pause and this ability to just celebrate and party without necessarily focusing on the cup, on the big cup. And so we get to start doing that on Thursday. And I think that's when kind of the ad blitz and the marketing will take over is on that Thursday. That'll give the team 9 days to either sell here in the city, or I know, there's already arrangements. They've talked about there's going to be a lottery for fans, as well as ECS is arranging for tickets if it happens to be in Toronto. So right now, the future is on hold while we just celebrate what happened on Sunday.
So will there be viewing parties on Wednesday, or are people just going to sort of have their own private attempts and then meet up on Thursday to figure out how they're doing this? No, I know for a fact that the Atlantic Crossing, which is the historical Emerald City supporters away bar, is hosting an away viewing party for two teams not involving the Sounders for, I think, the first time ever. It's just not something that happens. It's not something we've done with the CCL or Open Cup runs. That's how big of a deal it is. And I know, on Saturday Heart, we're gonna host, the online viewing party like we do, and I expect that it'll be a large turnout as well, because there's going to be a lot of people watching at home. What else are you going to do on a Wednesday night at this time of year, right? So you might as well figure out and start scouting your MLS Cup final opponent. Fair enough. I hope you serve Labatt's and poutine at the viewing parties. That would, I think, would be appropriate. Maybe you play O Canada as well. At any rate, I do believe, Dave, you did clinch the CCL berth with the win, because it's Montreal v Toronto,
they
right?
Did not.
Oh, did they not?
They did not. No, the cascading order goes by regular season standing. So if Montreal or Toronto win the MLS Cup, it'll be New York City FC as the final U.S. participant. Colorado had already clinched when Dallas got their double.
All right.
And
Yes.
then Red Bull got theirs for the regular season Eastern Conference title.
All right. So you eliminated. Okay. Good enough. Fair enough there. One final quick question. Is it comparable, the reaction to making the Cup final to winning the Supporters Shield, or is this a bigger deal?
I think it was bigger with the Supporters Shield, but they did that at home. So
Okay.
it's a little bit different, because you immediately went to the same, your pre and post game pub was the same place. If you wanted to hang out with the team, they'd be scattered and celebrating around town. We did have about nearly 200 people showed up to welcome the charter plane back from Denver last night. It landed at a smaller airfield, not SeaTac, out here, and 10 of us in the media and about nearly 200 fans celebrated with the team in a parking lot for a charter airplane company, which is something that only happened in 2009 when they won the Open Cup on the road, and that's it. That's the only time we've welcomed the charter back. So that was a unique experience, because even after a nearly 2.5 hour plane flight, the players were still absolutely ecstatic. But because it's the nature of winning a conference but waiting for the final, every single statement was, "We love this. We have one more game," and those were featured in equal parts. They aren't yet they're not jaded to the point where the LA Galaxy were, where winning the Western Conference didn't matter in the end because they've done it so many times. But at this point, winning the Western Conference is a big deal. Maybe some years in the future they'll have experience with it, so they won't celebrate. But last night they most definitely celebrated.
Fair enough. And I like Dave as someone who's been around for a long time, that was on the big soccer back in the days. Either Seattle, Montreal, or Toronto will win the MLS Cup, and that's really going to irritate some of those old grumps on big soccer, and that excites me on a different kind of petty level. But I will enjoy looking at that. I don't go there very much anymore, but
the same thing. I think the Nutmeg News already put out. Seattle fans look forward to being insufferable for the entire next year.
And Dave, TFC fans invented that. So there you go. All right. On that note, Dave, we will say goodbye. I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk again before the 10th, but enjoy the game Wednesday. And Kevin and I'll speak for Kevin here. We'll try to enjoy it. I don't think I'll necessarily enjoy it so much as endure it, but we'll talk soon, and take a quick break now and come back, and Kevin and I will wrap the show up.
You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, FeedBurner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS postgame show, open lines after dark, 5 rings daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
And welcome back for a quick wrap up, Kevin. Let's talk about a couple things quick about those games yesterday. I think maybe we'll start with the negative a little bit, and that of course was the Jermaine Jones tweet that everyone was talking about. If you haven't seen it, I screen captured. Yes. You can look on 24th minute.
Free agent, baby. Free agent, baby.
Yeah, exactly. The body wasn't even cold yet. That's just Jermaine Jones, man. I don't know what else to say. A lot of people are saying, "What do you mean he's a free agent? He doesn't understand the MLS rules." Well, you're right. He can't move to any MLS team he wants, but he is, in fact, a free agent in the sense that the world is pretty big in soccer, and that's why MLS needs to sort of be a little bit more flexible with its free agent rules moving forward. But nonetheless, kind of cold that was. He did delete it, so someone got your Jermaine at some point.
But it was there, and it was, soon. It was way too soon.
Yeah. Look, and a word to Colorado, they confounded us all year. They were right into it to that Morris goal. one bounce the other way. And as Dave said, they played very well in that first half. And at the pub that I was at watching it with the TFC fans, we were pretty nervous at halftime too, because it did, and we're not assuming that we're going to beat Montreal. Impact fans, I know that you're going to be inclined to think that that's what I mean by that. But certainly, if you were in the same boat, you would have been cheering for Seattle as well, because of the chance would be there. You wanted the chance. No one wanted to be planning trips to Denver today. We really didn't. And, that's a lot of money. However, so there we are. But a word back to Colorado to get off of our own sort of self-centeredness for a second here. It was a great season. And I think in the days ahead, once it's been a little bit calmer for them, we'll have someone on to celebrate their season, because it's celebratable. They were the ultimate underdog that proved us wrong almost to the very end, and I think that's always adds value to a season when a team like that comes out of nowhere, and hopefully they can sustain that. It was nice to see that stadium full. I do not ever remember seeing it full, Kevin, and it was nice. And it's a pretty little place when it's full.
Ever since 2012, when I paid more attention to MLS because of the impact, I do not remember to have seen this stadium full like it was during this run.
Yeah, well, it's always the jokes. It is the stadium that that we make fun of a little bit. You can read that Colorado on the seats, and it certainly wasn't. It looked like a different place, and we all want the sport to succeed in all the markets. So hopefully this will propel people forward. And you saw their supporters with their scarves off, and they sang them off, and it would have been disappointing to come this close into the moon. I know this personally because both Kevin and I will be there. One of us will be there on Wednesday. It'll be so close but so far, and It will be a bitter pill to swallow on the day. But I think in the days that follow that, we'll realize that it's nice to get this close too.
Exactly. It just hurts more because you got this close.
Precisely. All right. We have 1 minute left. We can go a little bit over if we need to, but just your quick thoughts on the game. Morris played with the flu, so people are
flu, and he hurt his knee a little bit after that goal. And you know what I was thinking? What if Tim Howard stopped that goal?
Yeah, well, I don't know.
It was a chip over the goalkeeper by Jordan Morris. But Jordan Morris, clutch, has been playing great for 3/4 of the season. Rookie of the year, Jordan Morris and Nelson Valdez. Valdez has been great in the playoff for Seattle Sounders. So, they carry the team, and it's all about either Montreal or Toronto when they move on. Same concept. You get hot when it counts. And if you look at the end of the season for both three clubs, they got into a momentum heading into the playoff that was carried over into the playoff, Montreal or Toronto. So it is interesting that yet still to this day, Major League Soccer, when you get hot at the end, you carry it over. In the playoffs, Seattle did, Montreal did, Toronto did.
Yeah, exactly. If you look back to Jordan Morris' season, actually, to tie it in a little bit to the potential of playing at BMO Field in the first final game of the year, his season really did start to get good. He actually turned the corner from kind of a slumpy, slow start with that wonder goal in Toronto earlier this year. It's a 2-2 draw, I believe, if memory serves. He scored the tying goal. And it was a beautiful curling effort that won goal of the week, and that kind of propelled him forward. So I'm sure that that's in the back of his mind, but I'm also sure that those guys will all be wearing their blue on Wednesday night as we would in the same situation, because they'll want to host the game. It will be tough for the Impact. Let's look at the possibility of the Impact finishing the job. And again, we're going to preview this a lot more, and we'll have our fun with it tomorrow in an extended version of the show. But Kevin, looking ahead, if you were to get past Toronto, how confident would you be with the Impact heading out there to play a game against the Sounders, who have been pretty hot, as you say?
Well, it's a turf pitch, a little bit hard, not as much as Olympic Stadium.
Nothing is.
No, fine. Concrete, but that's different. Dominic Oduro could still be very effective on that pitch to create the sparks, and it's all about your most talented players, like you mentioned, Duane, at the highest level, at the highest game possible in the MLS Cup. I'll take Nacho Piatti, Mancosu, Drogba maybe at the end, but more Laurent Sima over Lodero, Jordan Morris.
Yeah. In terms of a Toronto-Seattle matchup, obviously the game would be at BMO Field if that were to happen, so that would make it a little bit better for Toronto. It is a team that, with Lodero and the way he's been playing, that is hard to look at and not be a little bit scared of. That said, I think both Montreal and Toronto have pieces with Piatti. as you mentioned, the speed and the way that Toronto or Montreal plays might be able to provide some danger. But I also think, at BMO Field against TFC that Seattle would be, they'd be in with a chance as they're clearly talented. But I would think that Toronto might be the slight favorite in that circumstance. But let's not talk about that. Let's not look ahead for either of these two teams. We'll do that on Thursday. One of us will be grumpy in doing it. The other will be ecstatic in doing it. But nonetheless, we will wait till Thursday to do that in any real way. Today, we will look back to Seattle's win, and we will think about how close it is to the final leg. It's unbelievable. 1 day we could go right now. I was getting packed for my one-day adventure in Montreal. The bruises are starting to heal from the goals scored. Seriously, they are still bruises right now. It was a bit chaotic in there. But at any rate, Kevin, on that note, any final thoughts on Seattle? We congratulate them. And as I said, Dave and I have gone back. I've known him. It's weird, this world, when you've been doing what I do for as long as I do it. You have friends that are all over North America, and that's a great thing. I've never actually met Dave in person, and if Seattle does play Toronto, I look forward to meeting him in that circumstances in the days leading up. But
Let's
we'll
put
be
it this way.
the day.
One of us is going to meet Dave in person before the end of this thing.
Yes, exactly. All right. On that note, Kevin, I'm going to say goodbye. So why don't you wrap the show up and say goodbye as well.
Tomorrow, 11 a.m. for a live edition of Soccer Today. And until then, have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.